안녕하세요. 뚱인데요 팀의 팀장 히어로라고 합니다. 저희 팀은 5회차에 모여서 승강전 승격을 노리고 온 팀입니다.
번숨에 이러면 리밍이 닫았던 리밍이 자 데코드가 없기 때문에 뚱인데요 팀이 승리를 챙겨갔습니다.
저희 팀원이 닉네임이 해파리인데 스폰지밥의 해파리에서 따온 거라서 스폰지밥에 관련된 팀명을 지으려다가 생각해낸 게 이제 중독성 있는 것 같아서 뚱인데요로 하게 되었어요.
네, 뚱인데요 팀에서 메인 탱커를 맡고 있는 해파리라고 합니다. 아니, 핑핑이라고 합니다. 다시 할까요? 뚱인데요 팀에서 메인 탱커를 맡고 있는 핑핑이라고 합니다.
저희 팀은 5명 다 비슷비슷한데 실력이 굳이 에이스 뽑자면은 해파리 선수가 저돌적이고 경험이 많기 때문에 잘 이끌어 갈 수 있는 것 같아요.
자 뒤잡히겠는데 번숨이 너무 이쁘게 들어가고 있습니다.
아직은 그렇게 생각하지 않고요. 에이스가 되도록 노력하는 그런 모습을 보여야겠죠?
저희 팀의 스타일은 뱀픽 반반 가고 운영하면서 상대 실수 받아채는 그런 스타일이 지금까지는 강한 것 같고요.
그렇죠.
약간 무리해서 싸움 걸어봐도 됩니다.
예,
교환만 해도 이득이에요. 정말 들어왔고 이거 피닉스 노린 거는 세계 분리에
잘 들어갔어요.
내고 멸자까지 가져가겠죠.
그렇죠. 자 블레이즈도 벙커를 사용해줬지만
이거 카르잼
금방 철거가 끝났습니다. 게다가
이거 리밍쇼예요.
리밍쇼.
좀 더 공격적인 모습이나 색다른 조합 연습해서 승강전에 들고 가야 승산이 더 높을 것 같습니다.
네, 플레이오프 결승전에서 그 마지막 5경기 그게 가장 기억에 남고요. 그 경기가 왜 기억에 남냐면은 제가 그 경기에서 실수를 너무 크나큰 실수를 해서 지게 된 거에 대해서 많이 생각하고 있고.
이대로 끝내나요? 자 이러면 전역치기 퍼센트. 자 이러면 우승은 끝납니다.
그걸 밑거름 삼아서 승강전에서는 더 좋은 모습 보이게 노력하겠습니다.
플레이오프 트로그랑 했었을 때보다는 뱀픽도 좀 더 다양하게 준비하고 공격적인 모습이나 수비적인 모습 실수 안 하고 연습 많이 해서 승강전 이길 수 있도록 열심히 하겠습니다.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is where it all comes down to. This is where we're going to see which teams are going to stay in the open division or will have to go back to the open division and which teams will make it all the way to the pro circuit, man. It is time for the Crucible of HGC Korea. Your commentators of today will be Tetcher and Kendrick Swish. It is my honor to welcome you back, Tetcher. Really cool to have you back after all your travel, after all your previous Crucible action for Europe that you had. How are you feeling today?
I am feeling excited. The European Crucible was absolutely amazing. North American Crucible as well. Both regions were able to crown a new member into their respective leagues in the form of ePunks and Scythe Esports. And now, me and you together will find out if South Korea can do the same in what is your first ever Crucible. Nice!
That is true, actually. I've never had the honor and pleasure of casting any Crucible up to this point, so new experience for me as well, and boy, am I looking forward to this, because similar to the other major regions like NA and EU, we're going to have some packed matchups here today, because by no means is this a one-sided matter in which we have a clear favorite coming into this, because in Korea too, we do have some pretty awesome open division teams, and especially the team that we're going to witness today. This is Ddung. There are some really big names in the roster, aren't there, Tetcher?
Yes, there are some very memorable names. In fact, I've lost the player list. There we go. We have Hero and Got Kimchi, both very experienced players. I believe we found out that Crow also had a little bit of pro experience, but more importantly, we do have a slight roster change, don't we, Kendrick?
Yes, and that, of course, implies that the main warrior of Ddung is no longer playing with the team, at least temporarily or permanently. We do not know if there's some permanent changes going on or if it's just for this important Crucible match. But Ping Ping is replaced by H82. And if you've been following HGC Korea, if you've watched a lot of Wolf and G-Clef, then you will recognize that name because he's been playing for teams such as Miracle in the past. He's been a longtime veteran in the pro scene, a legendary Artanis player as well, good warrior, and that's exactly what we need here for Ddung, and that's going to be the role that he's going to play them.
Yeah, one of my his Artanis play back when he was on Tempest way back in the day was absolutely one of my favorites and one of the first ever shows of actual good Artanis professional play.
Yeah.
And now he has this chance to make his way back into the pro division. So it is Ddung today, aka this is Patrick, as you guys saw in that lovely interview. But we also are going to have, of course, another Crucible match tomorrow where our winners of the South Korean Open Division playoffs, Trog is best, will play against Gluck, G-Luck, a team that me and Kendrick have a little bit of extra fun this for, due to the fact that, of course, their coach is now a coach for a Chinese team in the form of Zeron coaching CE.
Yeah, very cool. There's a lot of parallels you can sometimes draw between, China and Korea. And as you said, Zeron, former player for Gluck, now tries his luck in China over there with CE. Unfortunately, wasn't all that successful because CE did not make it to BlizzCon. A little bit of an outrage there, a little bit of an upset that one of the most prestigious teams in China is no longer with the International Pro Division there at BlizzCon. So instead, we're going to have the 1 and BTG for China. Only 2 slots, of course. And for Korea, we have Miracle actually replacing Blossom for the first time in a long while that Blossom won't be representative for Korea at an international stage.
I mean, it feels right. As much as I love Blossom, as much as I love Blossom, if the team that beats Genji twice doesn't go to BlizzCon, the only team to do so, no other team has achieved that over this year. Dignitas haven't. They've had their opportunity. Tempest haven't. Ballistics haven't. No one has defeated Genji and I'm remembering back to first Eastern Clash. Ballistics beat them once there.
Yeah.
But I don't think they beat them in league play, so they're close. But no one has been able to beat Genji in the same way that Miracle has. So seeing them show up to BlizzCon is going to be incredibly exciting.
And there's a certain irony there as well, right? Because if you think back all the way to 2016, when both teams were still united under the same mother team, MVP, right? We still had MVP Black and MVP Miracle. And of course, the players are by no means the same anymore. A lot of things have changed, but still, there is this, this cry of the past in which you could say that this one sister team can finally beat the other, the big favorites, of course. And Miracle is going to be a team to be on the lookout for at BlizzCon, 100%. And as you said, the other Open Division team, by the way, to get back into the Crucible a little bit more, Trog is best. They were a team that I didn't really have on the radar. I did have a little bit of a conversation with G-Clef to talk about the Crucible teams because he knows them very well too. And he said Ddung is actually the clear favorite, but for some reason... man, Trog is best. They came out swinging, and a lot of those games were very close, and I had the feeling that Ddung could have won certain games, certain rounds, and we saw that in the previous Well Tetra, right, where Ping Ping said he made a crucial mistake, and that's why they lost, not because this is Trog is best, is the better team.
Absolutely, and those parallels exist in the other regions as well. We talk about the European Crucible.
Yeah.
E-Punks were clearly the best team for the entire phase, the entire season of the Open Division. They lost like 4 maps total over 7 weeks. It was mental. But it all came down to the playoffs. That's the one day that gives you that seeding option, that ability to choose your opponents, and that's the day they lost. Ddung now find themselves in a similar position. The question is, can they pull off a similar victory? Whereas E-Punks, they won in a 4-0. Can Ddung do the same against Supernova?
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about the Open Division teams now in Korea, and of course we have the same system here as in the other major regions, meaning that the winner of the playoffs is going to choose their pro opponent, right? So it was Trog is best, and they chose Gluck, and who can fault them, man? Gluck still waiting for their first map victory in the ongoing phase. They haven't really had a good ride up to this point, and Supernova, on the other hand, speaking of upsets, nobody really expected them to drop down to the Crucible when they played against Felice, because Felice, on paper, was the much weaker team.
Absolutely. Yeah, Felice looked a lot weaker, but it all came down once again to that last week. It always seems to be the end games. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that.
It was a 3-2.
It's unexpected, so it's a rough opponent to have to face, and it's why those playoff games can be just so important.
Yeah, and that match you were talking about, the 3-2 between Felice and Supernova on the last play day, it was just crazy to see Felice bounce back. And if there's one thing that Ddung can actually capitalize on in this best of 7 against Supernova, I think is the fact that Supernova may be a little shaken, and they show a lot of weakness when it comes down to closing games, right? Because against Felice, they had more than one opportunity in that game 1, for example, on Infernal Shrines, where they had a 4-level lead, and still they weren't able to close out the game. And at that point, you really have to question whether they have what it takes to stabilize in this Crucible.
You really do. So just a little bit of house cleaning before we jump too much into the analysis of the two teams here.
Yeah.
And that is, we already mentioned some of a roster swap in this case with
for Ddung.
Yeah, for Ddung. We also are going to be calling some of the players by different names. This mostly comes into effect tomorrow.
Yeah.
But today, Got Kimchi, Crow, Hero, these are all the same. But Stretch Your Back once in a while, we have been informed apparently would prefer to go by the pseudonym of Dr. Spine, which is as good, if not better, in terms of just cool names. Sounds like a super villain name, and I love it.
Yeah, almost goes into the direction of Dr. Octopus there. And he too had things coming out of his spine, right? So maybe there's a reference that we do not know of. But yeah, Dr. Spine, no longer Stretch Your Back, although both names were marvelous, as you said. And then, of course, the tank position swap, as we mentioned it earlier here. As far as we're aware of, there are no changes for the pro teams. So no player swaps or no changes for either Gluck nor, of course, Supernova. But I'm not even sure if they're allowed to make any changes. I don't think so for the Crucible.
I mean, these are... maybe? I don't actually know.
Unless there's a serious reason, like illness going on, of course, but...
I mean, this is, for starters, just fun, because when else would me and you ever have the possibility to cast these teams? Because, unfortunately, they're a little bit too low to make it to the BlizzCons and the Eastern Clashes and stuff like the mid-season brawls.
Right.
So this is really mine and your only opportunity to cast these bottom-tier teams of Korea, so it's going to be nice to see it through a caster eyes as opposed to a spectator eyes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And Korea is always a special treat, you know? And especially since the last mid-season brawl, I think it's safe to say that if you take the grand scheme of things into account, right? How many good Korean teams we have that perform well internationally compared to the other regions, even Europe, we have to admit, then the Korean region is currently the best in the world. No doubts. We have teams like Ballistics, Tempest, even Miracle showing up big time. Genji, of course, we don't even have to mention those guys. They're just looking super strong all across the board. And I think it's safe to say that Korea as a region goes in as the clear favorite to BlizzCon. And if you can make it into this prestigious league, HGC Korea, right, as a former amateur team, that is probably the coolest thing you could achieve.
I mean, the Blizzard released the HGC rankings, the power rankings, they believe, heading into BlizzCon.
Right.
And it was incredibly well done. I really did agree with almost anything. But there was like one area of the bracket where I was like, this is where I see chaos being. And unfortunately, most of those teams aren't in the same bracket, the same group. But BTG and then Liquid and then Miracle was what they ranked. That 3, depending on who shows up on the day, that's where I can see variants start to come in. I think Heroes Half was like above or below. I think they were like a little bit above there, but it's pretty close.
Speaking of which, Tisha, I'm not sure if you've read the article, but our friend Moonprayer from Tempestorm, who does a wonderful job at collecting all the data, you know, on the website and throws out amazing Heroes content in general. But he made a little bit of a power level list. Did you see it?
I did see. I compared the two. I agree with one more than the other, but they both have their merits.
All right. What would you say about his assessment of the Chinese region? Do you agree with it, or do you think?
I think his assessment of the Chinese region is very good. Okay. I really enjoyed that. It was his assessment of the American region that I was slightly disagreeing on.
Oh, let us know. What do you disagree with?
I think he ranked them too highly. simple as both the American teams did really well at the Western Clash, and both the teams, in my opinion, due to roster changes, seem a bit weak.
And I mean, maybe there was a little bit of Tempo Storm bias going on, of course, but I tend to agree with you. I'm still not sure if it's set in stone that NA is clearly better than China. I think
it's pretty set in stone.
You think it's pretty set in stone? All right.
I think so. If there was a time for China to beat NA, it would probably be this BlizzCon. Because, like I said, the American teams look a little bit weaker at the moment. But the Chinese teams aren't a huge amount better than they were last year. All we've had is like a changing of the guards, where the better teams got a little bit worse and the worst teams got a little bit better. I'd say we're about the same level, if not like 4 or 5% better. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Here's what I'm going to be really interested, though, in when it comes to the NA region, right? If you've watched the Crucible, for example, or the playoffs over there in NA, then you will have found out that the meta there is just completely bonkers right now. The NA teams are playing compositions that I've never seen before, that are unlike anything we've seen in Europe and Korea, and it works for them. But the real question for me is it going to work on the international stage against Korean teams, against European teams, maybe even against Chinese teams? That is going to be interesting. Or do you think they're going to switcheroo and just play normal again?
I think China might play normal. The American teams will most play normal. There's always a tournament meta of these things. After the first 2 days, everything will normalize a little. Overall, just so you all know, ladies and gentlemen, we're having a quick delay due to the fact that there is a sound issue with one of the players' computers. But to me, like when I was over, I hadn't done all of my North America research when I came over to do the Crucible. So the Crucible, even though I'm aware that's the lower level, was my first show of the American meta outside of the few games I'd been able to catch from Tempo Storm and Heroes Hearth. And watching that was just, hey, reverse ab Lucio. Hey, Valor compositions. Hey, this solo tank
Body
Blaze.
Slam Garrosh, why not?
Body Slam Garrosh. Like that, I can see maybe value because that healing's dope, but not this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
was
was
wild,
watching it
to
and
say
I
the
was
least.
very, very confused.
Yeah.
And then what didn't confuse me so much is they picked it. Because, of course, if you pick something and it works, then fantastic. If you pick something and it doesn't work repeatedly and you keep doing it, that's when I start to take issue. It's what I took issue with in HGC China. It's what I took issue with in HGC EU. It's what I took issue with in Open Division. And it's what I take issue with NA.
Yeah, at this point, I don't even know what makes me more confused. The fact that Reverse Lucio was picked or that it won. So I just don't even know what to think anymore. But either way, be it as it may, I think this year's BlizzCon has the potential to be one of the coolest tournaments we've seen in a very long while, because there is a little bit of turmoil going on right now. Is Gen G really, unbeatable, undefeatable? I mean, Miracle has a word to say about that. They showed us twice that it is indeed possible. And what can Dignitas pull off? Is Dignitas still in that tip-top condition that we know them to be? A lot of time has passed since Midseason Brawl, but here, ladies and gentlemen, we're finally able to present to you a couple of stats here. Here are the lineups for Ddung on the left-hand side and Supernova in the reds on the right-hand side.
Yeah, we have H82, Dr. Spine, Hero Crow, and got Kimchi for Ddung.
Yeah, that looks really good. Like, especially H82 and Hero, man. Those two players are going to have to carry. They bring in the most experience by far in that roster, professional experience, that is. But we also have No Chat. We have players of his caliber on the side of Supernova, and that is no slouch to just overcome,
Absolutely. Like you said, No Chat is just an absolute god. I cannot wait to see what he can bring to the table. We have two just big, long-time veterans, like you say, with H82 and No Chat. So seeing those two battle is going to be definitely one of my highlights of the day. But both teams are going to be preparing for their matchup, fighting, of course, for the chance to stay in the HGC Korean Pro Division, or, in the case of Ddung, to steal away the Supernova spot.
Yeah, and here we see the slight favorites, I would say. Not a big favorite by any means, given the fact that they looked rather shaky in their last game against Feliz. We see Supernova, the stronger of the two teams from the Pro Division still, especially when compared to Gluck, who I, at this point, can't even see make it. Of course, I could be wrong, because Trog is best too looked rather good. And although some of the victories against Ddung were a little shaky, a little undeserved at the time, they're definitely not a team to be trifled with.
Absolutely. So for now, we are prepared. We will hopefully be getting ready for the game shortly. Once again, we were told there was a delay, which is why we have not started yet.
Yes.
But we will be getting underway as soon as possible. Just to go back to BlizzCon quickly before we dive properly into Korea. Someone actually mentioned, like, when we were talking about the NA weird stuff, like, oh, but NA won the first BlizzCon with Murky. That is true. I don't. That's not the relevant part.
Are people still bringing that one up?
They are, but what it reminded me of is the return of Fan. This is going to be, I believe, if I'm correct, Fan's first BlizzCon since that first one.
Crazy, man.
That's a pretty big deal.
Like, a lot of people, a lot of people talked about some of the recent announcements in the pro scene, like JPL, for example, leaving Dignitas after BlizzCon. But then if you think about it, for how long some of the players have actually been playing the game professionally on a day-to-day basis, right? Giving their best, playing 6 to out, maybe even 10 hours a day. Pretty crazy at some point to see how long players like Fan, absolute legends, man, have been invested. But we're jumping all the way over from the tales of legends like Fan into the Crucible here of Korea. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see the overlay here. Yep, Ddung. This time not even using the Korean spelling. Thank you very much, production. That makes it much easier for us to follow it. On the left-hand side, first pick, first ban, facing Supernova in that game 1. I think the map was Dragonfire, wasn't it?
I believe so as well. We are getting underway now, though. And it is the first ban. Apparently, we are playing it on the same patch as the playoffs, so pre-Brightwing Kerrigan.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. By the way, first map is Curse of Hollow, my mistake. Dragon was banned out by Ddung, and Battlefield of Eternity was banned out by Nova, Supernova. So those two maps we're not going to face today.
Starting off with the Genji ban. Back previously, this was a fairly consistent ban for Ddung. Not as consistent as you would like. No, it wasn't actually. I've got that wrong. During the playoffs, they banned it once, but overall it was banned more consistently by Trog is best, and Trog actually picked it a couple times as well, due to Ddung not focusing on it as a ban. Yeah,
very true. Diablo, of course, still that unkillable force sometimes that you just can't get rid of no matter how hard you try. Yep. Genji banned as well. It's been a common theme around the globe. Sorry, go ahead.
It's interesting, actually, that we see that Genji ban, because Supernova haven't played it this phase.
They haven't
banned
played
it 28 times.
And they're also not
but
first
they haven't actually played it. Yeah. So that's very interesting. Ddung perhaps falling into a little of the trap that we saw in the playoffs, where not doing as much research on their opponent, just sticking with blind meta.
Yeah. Maiev, of course, also a very strong hero, especially in Korea. Very popular as well. And on maps like Cursed Hollow, where there's a lot of choke points, where she can trap you in, where she can catch you from, it's definitely a safe ban. But what is Ddung going to conjure to summon up here to start things off with here? It's the Hanzo, and if you think about Cursed Hollow Tetrarite, there's two bosses. There's mercenary camps. Hanzo with all that PvE damage that he brings to the table, all the vision as well. A very solid PvE racing car.
Exactly. Hanzo is just fantastic. Big CC assassin once he gets that level 10. Reyna, smaller amounts of CC to begin with, but of course synergizes beautifully with that Deckard Cain being the support pickup very early here for Supernova. Very sensible.
Yeah.
They've played it a fair amount this season. Not one of their highest pick rates, but it's up there enough to show the priority they have towards it.
All right, Gyros coming through with Whitemane, and that is a duo that I'm pretty sure we're going to see many times at BlizzCon, if there are no upcoming balance changes to change either of those two heroes, because they work so well together. All that armor that Gyros brings to the table will be very useful to keep him alive with that consistent poke healing coming in from Whitemane. If you've ever played against it, you can know, or you basically know how annoying it can be.
Junkrat removed, again, one of the more consistently picked assassins by Ddung, so Supernova removing that very effectively. Also, not falling into the trap we were talking about earlier of just sticking with their standard bans.
Right.
They banned a lot of Sergeant Hammer during league play, which makes sense if you look at their opponents they had with, like, Gen G, with Tempest, etc., big Sergeant Hammer teams. So it makes sense they have that many bans on the hero, but instead they've done their research on Ddung and removed one of their top tier assassins.
Yeah, and they themselves banned the Sergeant Hammer, as you said. When there's a Deckard Cain deployed, then, you know, this combo is very dangerous. I mean, there is a Rainer already, so sometimes you're confident enough to say, you know what, they're not going to pick 2 auto attackers, right? Because we just picked blinds against it. But, you know, they still might end up doing it anyways.
Falstad coming in, 1 and 5.
Double global.
Supernova this phase. The double global, like you say, as well, with a very immobile frontliner for Ddung. So hard engage, already looking to be a bit of a problem with disengage tools like the Mighty Gust now available. This is going to be interesting. Ddung, I think they need to pick a offlaner with a bit more immediate dive potential if they want any chance of actually getting a fight. And there it is, a double, in fact. Blaze with, of course, his thrusters, his jet propulsion, and the potential for the Thrall sundering if they need that extra bit of engage potential. I love this last 2 pick.
Yeah, the double global, of course, automatically shuts down heroes like Abathur as well, who are very popular in Cursed Hollow sometimes, because Abathur struggles against globals. Normally, you get outpushed, you get out-soaked by the globals. You also can't really move out on the map too much to soak with your slug body, because either Falstad or Dehaka might be able to catch you. So yeah, really cool double global pick there by Supernova and the Anubarak. I would actually call Anubarak the shining superstar right now in the international scene, because he's coming out of nowhere, but he's had so much success, not just in Korea, but also in other regions.
Yeah, when he's played by someone who can play him exceptionally well, he looks like he's like a shining star. Otherwise, that's quite loud. I need to turn that down.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, when he's played by someone who knows what they're doing with him, he looks absolutely fantastic. Otherwise, he can look like a detriment to the team. We saw in HGC China where we have players who play a little bit over-aggressive and they just get squashed like a bug.
Exactly, especially by very counter-aggressive heroes like that Diablo, right? Anubarak goes in too deep, and there's a wall nearby. Diablo is gonna melt that beetle when he doesn't really have any escape tools available because he used that bird charge aggressively. For now, though, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to introduce those teams once again for you. On the blue side, it is Team Ddung, the Open Division team trying to make their way into the Pro Division. And on the right-hand side, it is Supernova, a team that you might be familiar with if you followed Korea, with Wolf and G-Clef and Rapid presenting the league to you.
We already see a 4-man rotation without Dehaka heading down to this bot lane. Now, this will likely turn into Dehaka once he has soaked the minion wave here, tunneling up to top lane, having Falstad fly to mid so that they don't miss any XP that way, due to Falstad being a little bit too far away to fly all the way up to top lane. And right now, their rotation route being cut off. You can see Dehaka currently just body soaking against Blaze, waiting for someone to come up here and relieve him of duty, basically. Falstad moving into position. Looks like he might just walk up. Seeing as Dehaka's already cleared the lane, Dehaka can, of course, take the global. All
right, and already with that Anubarak, you can pull off fancy strategies like that early push, you know, because those beetles, they will actually intercept the focus of defensive structures like a fort, like those towers. So they basically got that bottom tower pretty much for free. And with that double global, of course, they can make sure that they get back to the other lanes in time so they won't miss too much experience in the early game soak. Bentham already on that Rainer, by the way, skating his way through those minions, through those mercenaries. Sorry,
that was a thing. As we see Crow starting off on his own team's mercenaries as well. Deckard having a bit of a dance. He's pretty comfortable here. He knows he has an Anubarak nearby, so he has assistance if he requires it. But overall, the laning setup seems to be very relaxed by these two teams. They want mercenaries, they want experience, they're not out for blood just yet. Of course, this is more efficient for Supernova, as the less immediate kills happen, the better they're going to be once the objective comes around, because double global means double lane's worth of soaking when the objective's up.
Yeah, and that is going to be very much the name of the game here. Hero back on this Hanzo, by the way, had a really strong performance there in the in the Open Division playoffs. H82 on that Garage. I'm super excited to see what he will bring to the table. And Thrall, I mean, I've got the stats right in front of me here. When Felice played against Supernova, they lost twice when Felice deployed the Thrall. So maybe a little bit of a weak point here. They maybe don't have the awareness to sometimes predict the flanks, to sometimes burst them down in time, because Thrall can be a very tricky hero to deal with, right, Tetra? He's got great self-sustain. Just when you think you have him down, he just pops that self-heal up from somewhere. And, of course, a good, decent Sundering flank can single-handedly win games.
Yeah, he has self-sustain, like you said, engage potential. He is disruptive. He has poke once he hits the later levels, especially with Thunderstorm and that cooldown reduction from his level 1 talent. It's all and with that poking potential, they might be able to make some pretty decent plays with Scatter Arrow, with that Chain Lightning. If they can poke down what will be the 3 members of Supernova who will be beginning to at least delay this, they might be able to force the point before the Globals can arrive.
Yeah, and that is going to be so important, man. You know, kind of finding those sweet spot, finding those time windows where the globals are in cooldown. Cooldown management on the side of Ddung is such an important thing to have here. And I think cooldown management in general is something that is super important in the higher echelons of competitive play. Not just on globals, but also on heroic abilities, and even certain you know, basic abilities need to be kept in control, need to be kept in check all